Hi, welcome. The interview you're about to watch is with one of my favorite people who has risen to a very high level in her industry. And you'll notice that I don't introduce her. And the reason for that is because she's in an industry where she can't make any public videos and identify where she works or what she does. But the story that she tells will be instructive and inspiring to anyone who wants to learn about how to grow as a leader. When I originally interviewed Brandie, I was doing a series called the Enneagram and Leadership. So what you'll notice from my questions is that I tie them back to the Enneagram, and Brandie's Enneagram number is a 6. So we talk about some of the themes of the Enneagram 6. Now, because Brandie can't give a lot of detail about her specific job, she talks a lot about her inner journey, which is really appropriate for our series. You'll notice some of the things that she talks about are very much in line with the journey that any Enneagram 6 might go on. It's all about really finding your security within yourself. So typically an Enneagram 6 is going to look for security outside themselves. They're going to look for an organization that they can trust. They're going to be very loyal. You're going to see that Brandie's been pretty loyal in her career. They look for strong mentors and guides and people that they can lean on for security, for support, for guidance. A lot of times, Enneagram 6s have the challenge that they're not really sure that they can trust their own judgment inside. And so, as Brandie talks about her journey, one of the things that she'll highlight is how doing values work helped her get grounded inside, because she learned what her values were, and that helped her make that transition from looking outside of herself for support and guidance and finding the truth and answers inside of her. Enjoy the conversation that I have with Brandie. It should be really helpful as you think about your own leader's inner journey. Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the leadership journey and the Enneagram 6. And I have with me Brandie Friedline, who I've known for many years and have so much respect for. I mean, Brandie has just this wonderful career. And I'm wondering, Brandie, if you would be willing to sort of share a little bit about your career journey, whatever you're willing to share, just kind of an overview, maybe touch on some of your natural strengths that you had, maybe some of the challenges that you had as you kind of grew into it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Happy to join you. I really appreciate this. And, I value our relationship as well, and friendship and all the consulting you've given me over the years. I think when you say how I grew into it, that's so appropriate, because I feel like I was growing up, right? Like, so as my career happened, I was growing up, and that was my journey. And some people know I was never that person that knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I needed a job. I was on my own. I needed to earn money. And so that's kind of how my career transpired. So early on, I was fortunate enough to work with an organization and run their benefits. And then opportunities came up from there. And so I went to a larger benefits consulting firm. And that's really where I think I built a lot of the skills that then kind of launched me into, I'll say, the next part of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And as I look back, it's been almost 30 years now that I've been on this journey and growing up. And I think now maybe can consider myself an adult in that career.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, I think what was tough for me originally was really, I had the immature version of myself. I hope it's the immature version of myself, where I felt like I was constantly trying to prove myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really felt inferior to pretty much everybody around me, and where that was tough for me and stressful. I think it did really kind of push me to always work harder and make sure that when I was doing a job, I did it to the best of my ability, because I felt like I had to make up a difference.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest difference I was making up at the time was a lack of a degree.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned that I started working because I needed to work. I needed that money. And so I was going to school as I was building my career. But I was fortunate enough to get a job at this fantastic consulting firm. And everybody I worked with had their degree. And back then, the environment was as we would start meetings and introduce ourselves, you would say, "Hi, my name is Nahid. I went to UCLA."
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of the introduction. I'd be sitting in the meeting going, "What am I going to say?" Like,
Oh my
so I
God.
just found creative ways around it, but it was awful. And it was at least once a week. We would never do that now, thank goodness. I think there's better understanding of how that impacts people. But I do think it really launched me. But that insecurity,
Mm-hmm.
it really, I think it kind of, I'm sure it's with me today too. But I think more as me and an adult, I've really learned to adapt to that. And right now, and I've been saying it a lot lately, is I'm trusting my gut. And that gut's not different than it was 30 years ago. It just has a
Mm-hmm.
lot more experience. And I've just really learned to, okay, I had this feeling maybe 20 years or 10 years ago. I didn't have the confidence to stick behind that feeling.
Uh-huh.
Now I do. But I really think a lot of my gut feelings and thoughts that have occurred over, my relationship or my career span, I'll say, um, they were right. Like that gut feeling, I think is important. And I think a big part for me was learning to trust that. And I think that's where I'm at in my career today.
That is so interesting because we're talking about the Enneagram 6 and sort of the key challenge of the Enneagram 6 is building trust. And a lot of times, as there's a lot of details that we're not probably going to go into here, but one of the core themes is that an Enneagram 6 in their search for a safe, secure environment will tend to align themselves with organizations or even strong mentors, people that they think might provide that solidity and that guidance for them. And that theme of looking outside for that guidance and looking outside for stability, but then also not really trusting that the people who are in charge of those organizations maybe always have your best interests in mind, or maybe they're not quite trustworthy. So it's all about trust. But then I love that you talk about how you got in tune to your gut over time and how in retrospect, you always could have trusted your gut, right? If you could have gone inside and looked. And I know that some of the Enneagram 6s that I coach, a lot of the theme in their life is they're sort of seeking guidance from something outside of themselves. And they really don't believe that they have the answers. And so just learning to trust that they may have some inner wisdom, getting them in touch with that inner wisdom is a big, big theme.
Nahid, it's funny you mentioned that because the job I mentioned, that big like job changer, career changer job I had at the consulting firm, it was our region was one run by a woman who was so strong, and she became my mentor throughout my career. And I worked with her for 10 years, and then I switched gears in between. So did she. And then she started working for another organization, and she recruited me to that organization. And that's where I am today. And that trust and loyalty, I have the shortest day I have at a job is 6 years. Like 10 years, 6 years, and now I'm at 12, 13 years in my current job. Like I really do. Like I want to be with an organization with people that I trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's hard for me to do my job if I'm not in that
Right.
environment because I have to put so much of myself behind it. But her as my mentor, when she first of all, when I got like a LinkedIn message from her saying, "Hey, I'm at this company now and there's a role here for you, I think you'd be perfect in." I remember just being so excited that she even remembered who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then part of my conversations with her over time have been like, I've always been surprised. Like she knew exactly what my skill sets. In fact, I think she knew what my skills were many times before I knew what my skills were. And
Mm-hmm.
it was her saying, no, you do this, you do that. That's exactly what I need for somebody in this role. And I was like, I do? Right. So that was part of learning to trust myself too. But having that strong mentor that saw those skills in me and believed in it,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that really made a huge difference for my career.
Yeah, I think that's so rare that we can have mentors that we really can trust to guide our career. So it's great that you found somebody that can really reflect back to you sort of what your strengths were. What would you say as you kind of continued your growth journey? What would you say maybe what a great strength was that maybe aligned with your Enneagram 6, or maybe a challenge that you had that aligned with your Enneagram 6 that you then overcame?
I think those are like so muddled, right? Like our
Right. They
strengths,
usually are.
they were a weakness, or I see a descriptor in like Enneagram or DISC or Myers-Briggs that I don't like. And I think that's not me. And now I've
Mhm.
learned to go, that's probably me. Let me figure that out a little bit more, because that is where I've learned that I can take those weaknesses and turn them into strengths. So
Mhm.
I would say, really, from a leadership perspective and just in my career overall, I've always really enjoyed understanding communication styles.
Mhm.
And I think empathy has a lot to do with this. And I do think that was because of the situation in my first job where I just felt like I just wasn't as good as everybody else. It didn't matter what the job, how well I did my job. I always felt behind.
Mhm.
And so I feel like I've always had a lot of empathy. And I think I've been able to, and as that, I was really interested in personality styles, communication styles. How can I connect with people in a way where they feel valued?
Mhm.
And I think that's become one of my greatest strengths, and actually really helped propel my career, because I often get feedback that you can work with any level of an organization, right? Like,
Mhm.
and my leaders will tell me this. I see you work with executives. I see you work with, folks that have been in their career for a while. And then I see you work with people that are just beginning, and you get the best out of all of them. And I think I've learned to flex because of that empathy. And just because of, I really enjoy that communication style, or the communication skill part of, my job, my personal life, really everywhere across the board. And it's been being able to find a way to relate to people and connect with people, which I know is also part of the Enneagram 6. Like, I
Mhm.
can start a conversation with anybody and
Mhm.
feel like, how do I get this person to like me, right? Almost,
Mhm.
so that they see value in me. And I really do. I think being able to communicate and like really watch somebody, and it took me a while to learn to listen more than to speak. Like, I was always trying to come up with the response because I had to prove myself. And I realized, oh, I'm not listening. I'm not an active listener. Once I figured out how to be an active listener and really watch what was going on, I feel like I was able to really then get the most out of the folks that I was working with, but then also give the most, right? How can I give
Mhm.
the person the most to help them build their career? And I think now I have to work with people all over my organization. It's the thing I love the most actually about my job now, is I work with so many different people, so many different levels, so many different skill sets, um, that I feel being able to communicate with them gives us a better ability to collaborate.
Mhm.
I'm a big believer of collaboration. And I feel like without collaboration from everybody involved in a project or a meeting or whatever, we can't get to the best result.
Right. You know what I love about this example is that the thing that caused you sort of the most humiliation early in your career became the source of your greatest strength as you grew in your career. And I think I just want to say to anybody watching this that if you have struggles now in your career and they're really causing you a lot of angst or pain, Brandie's story is such a great example. I have a similar story. It wasn't in my work environment, but I had a lot of angst in early relationships in school, in high school. And that kind of fueled my education in psychology and got me here. So it's just, they so value in leaders the ability to listen, the ability to put yourself in not someone else's shoes. And the other thing that probably does align with the Enneagram 6 is there's 3 energies on the Enneagram: the assertive energy, the withdrawn energy, and the responsive energy. And a 6 has responsive energy, which means they tend to very naturally attune to other people, and they get their needs met that way. But because they're so attuned to other people, then it sort of enables you, or sort of sets you up to really pay attention to how other people are communicating and get curious about what might be going on with them. So I love how that's grown into one of your greatest strengths. And I know that strength in particular is one that's probably one of the most valued in organizations today.
Well, I hope so. But those are, when I see those descriptors, that's where I'm like, I hope that is me. Like, those are the ones I like.
Right.
I wish I could just pick all of the traits that I like. Probably wouldn't get, very far in my career by doing that. But, the other thing when you're talking about putting yourself out there, sometimes I feel like I can be more introverted.
Mm-hmm.
And it does take energy for me to put myself out there. So even though I'm watching Nahid and I'm trying to understand others, there's a personal expense to that, and being on and putting myself out there. It's been critical for me to figure out how to do that. And then also protect myself to keep myself healthy. So there was a balance for me of figuring out, especially when my kids were younger, like, how can I do this, put myself out there in ways that take energy from me, but find ways to give myself energy back so then I can be a decent human being to everybody else in my life, right? And perform the best. That's been a huge part of this journey too, for me, from a personal perspective, is being able to find that balance. I found it through walking and running, really getting exercise. And now, honestly, it's value time with girlfriends and having conversations that, that are meaningful to me. So it's morphed over time, but I really had to find that space and give myself permission, because I serve others. I'm constantly serving others, and that's my comfort spot. And sometimes I feel like if I'm not working to meet the expectations of others, I'm failing.
Yes.
And so my realization there, and it was probably through some of the core values training that you and I did, was what is important to me. And I really need to work to be that person, and finding those private moments for myself. And it didn't take that long. Once I got in a stride, I realized that, wow, I'm such a better person for everybody else when I take that time to give to myself and not to be meeting the expectations of everyone else around me.
I love that. And so one thing we share, so I am not an Enneagram 6, but I'm an Enneagram 2. And I also have responsive energy. So I'm also very attuned to other people. And I also find that I needed to learn how to set boundaries to protect myself. And I also learned that for me, very similar to you, as soon as I start giving myself what I need, my relationships with other people get so much better.
It's amazing. And it just seemed like this simple thing once I did it, but it took me probably a decade and a half to figure that out. And I think it was my daughter. My daughter one day, she said, Mom, you always, like, when you promise something to others, you always follow through on that. But when you promise something to yourself, you don't.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, like, you're right. And I think my daughter saying that, and she was probably 15 at the time, I didn't want her to think of me that way, but I wanted her to make sure she was basically living up, to herself as well. So if she promised herself something, health, diet, whatever it was, education, she lived up to it.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. So speaking of young people sort of growing into their career, we probably have some young Enneagram 6s at the very beginning of their career right now watching this. What, if you could come up with maybe 2 or 3 tips that you would give, what would they be?
Well, I think one, trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
really, you know yourself the best, right? And you need to believe in yourself more than you should expect others to believe in you. So trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think find that balance and find it early. Don't wait 15 years. And let's see if there's anything. Well, it's a small world. Like your know your brand, know your quality, and put everything behind that
Mm-hmm.
because it really truly is. And I look at where I am in my career today. I never thought I would be in the role that I am doing what I do now 30 years ago when I started my career. It was the people that I met, those mentors along the way that then said, I have this role for you. It's great. And they kind of pushed me on my journey. But I do think that's because I always wanted to provide quality, that clear communication. And I knew my reputation was behind everything that I did. It is a small world.
So
You
people will
can't
see
ever.
what you post. People
Oh,
will
oh, and I
see.
run across professionals. Like when you're in an industry, people are kind of, even though it's a big industry, you're going to run into people, especially if you stay in the same like geographic location.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is kind of funny. It's not like it is a small world. You're going to run into these people. So you always want to be proud of how you're interacting with that person.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are the things. Trust yourself, find balance, and like get a brand that has quality or something that's really meaningful to you that you can stand behind. And that can be a consistent throughout your entire career, regardless of what you're doing.
I love that. And I love that also because it really represents the journey of the Enneagram 6. Instead of looking for security and, some solid footing from something outside of yourself, kind of really getting into trusting your gut instincts and then figuring out what your brand is and what you want to stand for. And as simple as I'm going to put my all into every project I work on, or I'm going to put my all into everything. That's a perfect way to just kind of center yourself and ground yourself and bring yourself that trust and that safety and security so that you can deal with maybe some more chaos on the outside if that happens.
Yep.
And make the changes you need to make if you're not in a place that's perfect for you.
Absolutely. And it was my boss, that mentor that brought me along. We were talking about brand. And she said, you can always start your brand. Like if you feel like that brand's not as strong or you have some things maybe you feel like you didn't live up to your brand, it's okay. Tomorrow's a new day. That's when you start it because you're interacting with different people all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if then you interact with somebody that you interacted with a decade ago, they're going to realize, wow, that person's come far.
Yes.
Or they're reacting differently. So it's never too late.
We're all going to have tough spots in our career, right? We're all going to have tough spots. And I can see someone who's an Enneagram 6 also being really hard on themselves, right? Really wanting to do the right thing, to serve people right. And so taking responsibility early as opposed to saying, oh, this wasn't my problem, right? What part of this, did I contribute to for good, right? Being responsible and owning their part of it, but also maybe crossing that boundary and owning more of it than you need to own. So just maybe crumbling emotionally every once in a while when something doesn't go well. And so I love that you say it's never too late. You can always start from now because people have small memories and you can always re-strengthen their perception in a direction that you intentionally want them to see.
But I think you have to be willing to let go.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, any kind of failure, anything that I didn't do quite right would linger. And I'd carry it around like baggage. And as I was watching my kids do this, I feel like, stop. Just focusing on the past is not going to help you. Learn what you can from mistakes that were made and move forward. It's about how you react and it's about how you take that stuff to the future.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm like teaching my kids this, I'm like, I don't do this for myself. Like I'm lugging around all these bags behind me of my mistakes. Just let it go. It's not serving you. And then once I figured that out too, like I really am a grown up now. I think now he'd listen to me, right?
Yes. We're grown ups and we're still growing up. I think I will be growing up until the day I die.
It's so funny. Like as I talk to you too, I was like, you're a big part of this for me because I'm talking about this stuff. And as I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, I've had this conversation with Nahid before. Like, and you were guiding me and pushing me like in different directions or to just get out of my comfort zone, to where I am today. And, even just an earlier conversation we had, it's like, I really love where I am today. I feel very fortunate. I love the job that I'm doing. I feel content.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think that was possible in a career. I thought I should always be, pushing myself to the next step. But I am like, I'm very happy and content and with what I do now. And I'll always be learning. I know that that's critical. Always be learning. I value education, but I can focus on learning different things.
Yeah. And what I see as the real kind of culmination, I would say, of just getting you to a good place. I see it's like the trusting your gut. So you've kind of internalized that trust and then choosing and standing for balance in your life and really thinking about what your needs are and taking ownership of getting your needs met, right? And look how happy you are. And you are not the first person that I've known for a long time and have gone through so much, because our life is all a journey, right? But have had points in their lives when it didn't seem like anything good was happening, and it's just traumatic or stressful. But then on the other side of it, you create this happiness that you never even knew existed. And I think that's the value of ongoing personal growth and self-awareness, and just keep working towards it, because you make those shifts inside and your whole outer world changes.
It's amazing, truly amazing.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to interview me with me on this. Any last words for any young Enneagram
Yeah,
sixes in their
young
career?
enough. I it's just understanding your core values. It took me a while to figure that out. You and I worked on that a lot. And I was like, I don't know what my core values are. And I know some people that's very embedded in them. It wasn't. And
Yeah.
I think going through that process put me on the right road. So when I do feel lost or feel a little off track, I just go right back to my core values. Sometimes I don't want to do it. It's just like, it's hard. Like I have to
Mhm.
hold myself accountable. But when I do, I find my way back. So I get off path. I'll always get off path. I think I get back on path faster.
Right. And you get back on path by tuning into your core values.
Exactly.
Yeah, love it.
So know your core values.
Core values, definitely.